I wanted to understand my dad. I did. I tried many times to see his world and his logic, but I just couldn't. And military intelligence, by virtue of even just the function of the role, is to build relationships with people to extract information.
Most conversations about connection tell you what to think. But are easy answers ever enough? I'm Keith Richardson. With my co host Gerren Taylor, this is More in Common. Honest conversations about what keeps us apart and what doesn't have to. Come think with us.
Cool. This is the
Jonathan.
thing. AI is a tool, but I'm not going to just
It is.
listen to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It
have
always
I'm my
tells
own
us
man.
this goes on too long. Our friendly banter goes on too long. It's like, no, it feels right.
And now we have a
It
third
feels right.
person for friendly banter, so it can get even wilder. Who knows what may happen.
And I do love some banter, so we're good. I was gonna say, actually, since we're still small talking, Keith, to your point about never unknown. Like once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know, I think of just Plato's allegory of the cave, right? And like that's a bit of what the world is today, right? Like we've had this veil lifted from our eyes. The shadow on the wall is no longer there, and we see the real world. And then you come back in and have to chain back in, and it's like, wait, no, I already know how good it is. Like, no, I'm not gonna. Well, I already know what this is. You know what I'm saying? So like that's a whole episode right there. Like, how do you? What's the balance, right?
And that's why you're
Yeah.
back with us on the More in Common podcast. I'm Gerren Taylor. That's
Yeah.
Keith Richardson. And that's why I don't listen to Claude about the banter, because that's a gem right there that you dropped. Joining us this week is Jonathan Pride, who is a combat veteran and author and the founder of Caterpillar Leadership Institute. He spent 8 years in the military as an intelligence officer, ran InPower Texas, where he helped over 750 people launch tech careers. And he's the author of Caterpillars Don't Fly. He's based in Fort Worth and grew up one of 14 siblings, which we definitely have to talk about because that is an experience, in New York City. Jonathan, welcome to More in Common.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm just excited to join forces and talk real life and really help keep this conversation moving forward. I think what you both do is amazing. It's necessary. I think we need more of it. It's natural, it's authentic, and it's a conversation that the world needs to hear. So thanks for having me, and I hope I don't talk too long and I do get another invite in the
No,
future.
that's fine. We're not paid by the hour, so this is fine. Listen, I got to start at the beginning, though, because we were on this prep call and you said 14 siblings. I immediately went, what? Like
That's
that
right. Yeah.
in New York, no less. So, like, what is that household like?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm 13 of 14. So get this.
So you're the baby or almost
Yeah,
baby.
I'm the baby boy. My parents were both married before. My dad 3 times, my mom twice, and my dad was a Rolling Stone if there ever were one, right? You all heard this song from The Temptations, born in
I thought that's a
1933. That's right, that's
fantastic
my song too. The 10-minute intros, that's the best part of it. You know, yeah, he was born in 1933. He passed in 2021, but he was born in the Dust Bowls of Oklahoma. And the only way out of those rural communities was to get married and join the military. And that's what he did. So he got married, had 2 kids, went to the Air Force, divorced shortly thereafter, came back, got married again, had 4 kids. Yeah, 4 kids. And then divorced and met my mom, who they got married and had 6 kids. And then my mom was married before my dad and had 2. So all told, I'm one of 14. I lost 2 siblings over the years, so I am one of 12 living. But yeah, I'm the second youngest boy. And all of them at one point or another lived in or around New York City. So
Wow.
the holidays were something, I'll tell you that much. But I also didn't get much in Christmas gifts, as you can imagine. I was hand-me-downs 4 generations probably. So yeah, one
Well,
of
and
4.
like the last name makes sense. Like, your dad had a whole pride, like a lion. Like he had a whole pride.
Yeah.
But so in this group, in this whole expanse, where you mentioned you're the youngest boy. So in that dynamic, growing up, what were you in the roles of like all the sibling? Were you the peacemaker? You're the riotous one? Were you the sneaky kid? What was your role?
It's an interesting question because I guess it depends on who you ask, right? If you ask which of my siblings, I like to believe I was the peacemaker. Although, as a true New Yorker, I talk a lot of smack. I mean, it's what I do, right? I'm the stole the pot, knock it over, and then try to help people clean it up, right? And say, no, it wasn't. Come on, yeah, I'm the peacemaker, right? And so I I was always in this interesting spot where folks never took me serious, right? Because I was, and I'm tall now. Now I'm 6'4", but I didn't hit my growth spurt till I was 14. Get that 14. So from 0 to 14, I was scrawny, I was small, I was always overlooked. They kind of just looked at me because for counsel because they didn't think I really could do anything with the information I was given. And as I grew and as I became a man and I started my own family, I'm the sibling that folks come to for their secrets. Like, hey, this is
Mm,
I need you to be a volt for me, right? Because again, I still have that childhood expectation of not really knowing what to do with the information I give. But now it's like, well, I know John's not going to say nothing, so let me go to him, see what he thinks, and then I can bring the different people together because I'm in this kind of overlooked role as a kid. So it's an interesting dynamic still, right? My older siblings, um, they look to me for that kind of that rock guidance piece. And I'm also the only one outside of New York City. I live in
Mm.
Texas, and they all are still around the tri-state area. So I have this worldview from the same upbringing, but I bring a different dynamic to the family.
How did that, like 14 kids, you're all still close though?
Close enough to call each other and send cards, right? I don't know that we hang out as much as we probably should. Um, but we share parents, right? Mom or dad, and we have a text thread of 14, right? So we
no way.
communicate. Yeah, get
That
that.
must
And
be
actually, today's one of my nephew's birthdays, and
the
so
most
we've got
lit group
the
chat.
10 million messages that go back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
In large families, like that closeness is always it's different because your oldest siblings are way older than you.
That's
Then
right.
and so that age dynamic, they're like uncles, right? Like
Yeah,
uncles
yeah.
and aunts versus brothers and sisters. Um, and I'm fascinated by like the work you do today and the book you wrote, right? And this emergence of being the caterpillar into a butterfly. Like, how did that upbringing and people relying on you and to be the vault because you didn't know what to do with that information so they could trust it. How did that inform this journey that you've gone on?
Yeah, yeah. It started with my parents, and I had a very complicated relationship with my father, like many do, right? Especially in the Black community. My dad was, I didn't understand him as a kid, right? He was 50, get this, 53 years older than me, 52 years older than me. So, 52-year-olds have grandkids and great grandkids. My dad was my father at 52 years difference. And he grew up in this hard life. I mean, he was picking cotton at 7 and 8 years old in Oklahoma. He dropped out of 3rd grade, because his mother passed and he needed to work because his dad left. And so he just had this life, and he imparted his life story on me and my 6 siblings, right? The initial 6. And that's who I consider like full blood, right? Obviously, I have multiple siblings, but the 6 are who I did life with growing up. And my brother, the next closest sibling between the 6 is about 17 or 18 years difference in age. So they were uncles. They were, like
Mhm,
distant, even though
mhm.
we were blood related. And so my dad and mom, they were just traditional, conservative, right, hard nosed Christian families. Um, and they just they imparted this fear of the world on us, right? Like, don't do this, don't do that. The devil's gonna snatch you up and this and that, right? Like, you gotta just follow the rule of the Bible, you know, to
It
the
was
T.
hardcore
It was
Christian
hardcore, yeah,
upbringing.
it was hardcore. You know, we couldn't do a lot, right? We didn't get Christmas cards or Christmas gifts, um, except from 1 or 2 siblings who just did it, but it was different growing up.
But that also kind of explains all the kids, to be
Yeah.
fruitful, multiply, that's
It
part of the
does,
thing.
yeah, it does. It explains the mindset for
Yeah.
sure.
And you mentioned, I
Um,
was saying on the pre-call that there might be an additional sibling.
yeah, maybe it's possible, right? My dad had, someone, who from his first marriage, who looked an awful lot like him, but, you know, he there was no DNA test back then, right? So there was no Maury Povich, he wasn't around yet, so maybe he was one of 15, maybe he wasn't, I don't know, right? Who
Could you
knows,
imagine
right?
14 people on Maury Povich?
Listen, I can
Oh,
tell
yeah.
you're a man of
Figure
a
out
certain
You are a
generation.
15.
good father. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know, right? Like I think that all of this, Keith, to your question, it really shaped my mind around this idea that we're all caterpillars. And the types of butterfly we become in life is not determined by the butterfly's wings. It's determined by when we enter that cocoon. Like it's this idea of the cocoon is our story. You go to a cemetery and you see these people who live lives, some 1 year, some 100 years. And the only thing that separates one tombstone from the other is the dash. That dash is the cocoon. And from an early age, I just had this idea of I need to own my cocoon because if I'm not careful, I'll be a caterpillar like my dad was. Right. And then a butterfly. And I just repeat this childhood for my kids that he gave me. And again, as he as I grew older, I learned to appreciate a lot more of his qualities, his better qualities, but it was complicated as a kid. And I didn't know that I learned love from my parents' marriage. I didn't learn a love a parent has for their kid as a kid from the love my parents gave me. I know it now and I can respect it now and appreciate it now. But it took me owning that middle, owning the dash, owning the cocoon. And so as I authored my book, it really follows my life through 7 major kind of mile markers.
And
And I call yeah, go ahead, Garen. Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I was gonna say to that point, owning the cocoon, right? You said your dad was in the military. You decided to join the military as well, but not just, anything. You're a military intelligence officer. This is a specific choice inside of a specific choice, right?
Right, yeah.
Um, what about this part of your philosophy in this time point and this upbringing point led you to intelligence specific?
People, Garen, people. I loved people. I love people. I wanted to understand people. I wanted to understand my dad. I did. I tried many times to see his world and his logic, but I just couldn't. And military intelligence, by virtue of even just the function of the role, is to build relationships with people to extract information or to build cases or to target individuals. And I was drawn to intelligence because of my love and my natural affinity for needing and wanting to understand the human psyche. Why do people do? Why do they act? How do they think? Why? What are the stories behind the stories? Right. And so that it's in and of itself is why I was drawn to this military intelligence field in the military. But Garen, to your point, my choice of the military was rooted in my dad, right? My brother, one of my brothers, my brother who was of the core six, also went to the military because as a young age, my dad was like, "You boys need to go to the military." So I just had this expectation in my mind that I guess my dad said I gotta go to the military like him, so I went to the military, right? But it was kind of in this evolution of me that I learned that the military was a choice, but there were these secondary and tertiary impacts that I didn't know I was living through that choice.
Well, that was actually kind of my next question too, though. So through that choice, You've seen some hairy stuff in your work. What does that do now to your relationship with other people, with like trusting, with interactions? How does that affected you since?
You know, it's me. I am very intentional with giving grace, which is actually counter to New York's culture, right? New York is like a hard-nosed city, New York City, whereas
I'm
like
walking over here.
yeah, yeah, I'm walking. Hey, I'm walking. No, like I give grace, right? I seek to understand.
Mm.
Um, I try to reason with people from all walks of life. I said walks, Gerren, because you just said New York City. Now my walks and
Now,
my water came out naturally, organically. But I give grace. I try to understand people and why they are the way they are. Right.
this
I think it's interesting. I'm sorry, Keith, just to finish this
no,
thought.
finish.
I
Yeah.
think it's interesting that my entire brand of who I want to be intentionally, right? Not who I am, but who I strive to become is intentionally built on every day I meet you, I'm meeting you for the first time, right? Keith and I met through somebody who's a phenomenal connector and a bridge. And Keith and I met a while ago, right? And I'm seeing Keith again. And Garen, you and I met in our prep call, but I don't know what's happened in Keith's life between that first time I met him and today. And so when I meet him, if there's any type of reaction that is outside of my expectation of what's normal for him, I need to understand why. And I think that is what my brand is. Again, my dad, my mom, all 14 siblings, maybe 15, maybe 16, but all of us we're in the same place, but we arrived here differently. And I think that's what is grounded me in everything I do. It's intentional, but it's hard because people suck sometimes, most times, right?
Don't they? Don't they? There's first, tie it back to, I don't know if you've seen it, but this is a core tenet of the more in common philosophy and our more philosophy, meeting people where they are. And it's just this idea that we spend 365 days a year, 52 weeks a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day with one person, and that's ourselves. And to your
That's right.
point, like you might have got a bad night's sleep last night, and it might shape how you showed up today. And that is an entirely different thing since we talked on, earlier in the week in the prep call, and so many things influence this moment. And I think the shape of what you're saying, and I think there's an interesting observation in this caterpillar to butterfly, is that it's almost if, and I'd love your reaction to it, the butterfly is what other people see, but we're always in the cocoon,
Yeah.
right? Because we never come out of it. Where you said the person I want to be. And we have this tendency to judge the butterfly, even though that butterfly really hasn't emerged yet. And we don't know what type of butterfly that's going to be. And we may re-enter the cocoon at some point
That's right.
and reemerge differently later. And our judgments, I love your space in grace. I think it's such a, I mean, it's a thing we talk about constantly. And I'm curious to understand, like, as we think about the last, because this episode of this arc for our audience is getting to know you.
Yep.
And all of this has led to this emergence of a business and your SOAR approach. And like help us, kick this arc off, understanding a little bit more about what that is and really how you came to come to that philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much to unpack, Keith, and what you said. Um, and I'm a storyteller, Keith and Garen. You know this, and your audience is going to know. I've got stories to support everything because I think that's the oldest form of education is storytelling, right? Folks around the fire, sharing news, sharing
It's the
updates,
only
sharing
way we've
highlights.
ever passed
That's right.
information on in the history of
That's
all
right.
things. It's why fake news works. It's why, you
That's
know,
right.
any nature of information that's shaped in a story makes you remember it more than facts and figures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's important though that we own this story, right? So Keith, to react first, just briefly to the idea of the reemergence from the cocoon. And it is, there's no one size fits all. There's no life decision that I like to, and I think you both will appreciate this story arc of self, right? Like there are multiple arcs of our lives, but I use three in my framework. The first is the chronological story arc, right? I was born, I lived, I die, right? There are dates, there are key markers on this long arc of my story through my chronological mapping, okay? And then um, there's another arc that I consider that runs parallel, and that is the past, the present, the future, right? Like the past arc are all of the decision points we made along that chronological arc. So think of the day you went to college. That was a choice. You decided to go. Or the day you went to the military, the day you dropped out of school. Like everything we've done to get us to this moment is on that story arc. But they're not necessarily tied to a day. It's a season. I was on a meeting earlier today with an organization doing just amazing work. I don't know that I can shout them out, but I'll just say they work in the substance abuse recovery field. And think of substance abuse, and it's something that there's so many stories across America of folks who struggle with substance abuse. And this conversation we were having was the loss of a loved one tied to substance abuse. And they said the date, but it was 6 years before that date where the story started. That is on this past, present, future arc, right? And then the third arc that I consider, and I promise this makes sense, right? Stay with me. The third arc that it runs parallel is this major milestone or major mile marker or major decision point arc. This is where you live intentionally. This is where you decide what are the makings of your cocoon. To answer your question now, Keith, again, this is how it's going to tie together. Here's the answer to the question. How I came to this metaphor conclusion of this is what I wanted my brand to be. You know my story a little bit more about I grew up in New York City. I was one of multiple siblings. I was in high school with four siblings in the same grade. I was a freshman. I had a sister who was a sophomore. I had a brother who was a junior, and my older sister was a senior. Right? We are all 1 year apart, the six of us. So four of us were in school at the same time. So I played basketball. I was pretty decent, I think. And my brother, who was 2 years older than me, also played basketball. My brother, I consider Captain America. Everyone loved him. He was a shining star. He was this guy who all the teachers loved him. He was honor roll. He went to West Point, right, the military academy at West Point, which is a prestigious Ivy League military school, right, fully paid. And I did not go there. The same coach who coached him in basketball coached me in basketball. And my brother got an award for the Sportsman Award. I got an award for an MVP award because I was a lot better than him in basketball. But I'll never forget this moment. My brother, his ghost haunted me because when I got this MVP award, it said my freaking brother's name on it.
Oh,
The coach based his view on me, whether subconsciously or consciously, on the ghost of my brother.
right.
Right. So in my mind, to really break my wings free from the cocoon, I had to not just own that my brother was doing okay and be okay with it, but I had to own that I am different from him. So I can choose to let this bother me, or I can choose to emerge as my own butterfly. But that's not the end of it because I went to the military like he did. He went to West Point. I went to a 4-year liberal arts school in Vermont, right? He became an officer. I became an officer. Again, I can choose to let this idea of what excellence should look like define me, but I don't. I said, okay, another one of my cocoons that I need to emerge from is I went to a small 2,000 student liberal arts school in the mountains of Vermont, and I can still be successful in my own right. And so I will emerge from this cocoon differently. And I have several points, right? And I'm not going to just keep talking. I'm going to end here, but there are several points in the story of me where I willfully, intentionally, entered my cocoon as a caterpillar, knowing that on that third arc of decision points, my life and my trajectory was dependent on me surrendering myself to the cocoon so that I can emerge better than when I entered it. So,
Yes,
ethereal, I answered I hopefully.
you
Hopefully
did
answered.
You did.
thoroughly in some
Uh,
ways. No, because it just made more questions. Is why I say that.
Yeah, lots
Um,
of questions. Yeah.
because well, one that stood out for me too. At this point, when you're leaving the military, and this is going to be a two-parter because we're running out of time for this episode. But we're on a 3 episode arc, guys. So Jonathan's not going anywhere. When you're leaving the military, what was that cocoon and experience like? What did you have to unlearn from that experience in order to operate as a civvy now? And then on the backside of that, what's the cocoon that you're in right now?
Yeah. So leaving the military, the cocoon was everybody thought I was an idiot. Everybody. Why? Why would you leave the only thing you've ever worked on as an adult? Why would you leave a secure job? I was an officer. I had prestigious roles. I had combat deployment. I had all the things that would have made me a lifer in the military. And at the height of my power, I said, I'm out. I threw up the deuces. And everybody in my family, the military community, this network I built and was part of were like, you're crazy. Why? The allegory of the cave, we talked about that. They saw the world I knew was in the cave. And it was good because I was successful and growing, but it wasn't for me, Gerren. I wasn't fulfilled. There was a gap in my life that I was living a life for someone else. And I was living a life because my brother was still in. I was living life because my dad at the time was like, "Go be a general, son." But no, it wasn't my calling. And so I left the cocoon and I said, I entered a cocoon saying, everything I know, I'm willing to throw it away because I know inside of me is a better butterfly. The cocoon I'm in now is I'm I've lived these cycles. I grew up and I was something. I left to go to the military. Again, the only person in my family who left New York City to go to school. I was the only one. I was the only one who went to a private school. The rest of them went to public schools. Right? I was the only one who kind of swam upstream. Right? And then I did it. I proved myself that I can do it. I went to the military. I proved myself I can do it. I left the military. I went to corporate. I did really well, got promoted. I proved to myself I can do it. Um, I left corporate and went to nonprofit executive leadership, which is a job that I still represent now. And I'm a chief program officer for a national nonprofit. Again, I'm proving that I can do it. Garen, the cocoon I'm in now that will help your listeners understand who I am is this question: who was I proving it to? I'm in a cocoon where I'm proving to myself now that I can do something for me, right? If I peel back this onion and these layers, maybe I was doing all these things because I wanted to finally silence the ghosts of the people who said I couldn't, or I was too small, or I wasn't my brother, or I wasn't strong enough, or I wasn't smart enough, or I wasn't bright enough, I wasn't white enough, I wasn't dark enough, I wasn't black enough, I wasn't, this. All these different things we hear kind of feed into these boxes that we compartmentalize. And we make our decisions in life based on these things. I am in a season right now where I'm saying I'm living not for me, but through me, I'm living for everyone. And through this brand I build, I think everyone can say, you know what? Forget all these expectations that are placed on me. I have a cocoon that's in front of me and a butterfly within me. And God's given me the power to choose to fly. Choose to fly. And that's this arc I'm in now. And that's what this brand I'm building is going to be. And so again, long answer. I'm a storyteller. Apologies, but
No,
No,
that's
it's
that
it's
was
good. I I I think there's such a reflection of the recent arc we went on and what individualism really looks like
mm,
versus the hyper individualism that we live in. Because that cocoon that shapes us early, to your point, it's not, I need to get away from all things that shaped me. It's using the things that shaped you to go on a path that works, where you can seek to find how you're going to emerge. For you, that was military. It wasn't West Point. It wasn't staying there until you were a general. Then it's you're starting to this path is trying to figure out, like you said at the end, how am I as a human best serving those around me?
Yeah.
Not
That's what I
just
heard.
how
I
am
heard-
I best serving me to get the most out of me. It's how am I best serving those around me? But each stage is influenced by those boundaries that people put on us, because they think there's a certain way, and understanding those and seeing those and working through those. It's such an awesome story it's easy to visualize.
It sounds like you always had service to others kind of as the underlying thing. I mean, that's what military service is, right? But you found your superpower hyper mode of it through your own individual excellence, right? You found that the best way I can be, the best of me, is giving back to others. And that's crazy. Even, we'll talk more as we move through these episodes about what you've created, how that's going. But we're also going to talk in the next one about what it costs to be you, what you have to give up to be Jonathan Pryde, executing all these things everywhere.
Yeah. I love it. This is a great conversation. I'm excited that we're having it, because it's a necessary conversation.
Absolutely. Hard questions, no easy answers. This is the More in Common podcast. I'm Gerren Taylor. That's Keith Richardson. Jonathan Pryde will join us again next week, and we'll see you there.
Yeah, let's keep it going. Let's roll.